Joining me now to discuss this, CNN legal analyst Shan Wu. He's defense attorney, former federal prosecutor, and CNN legal analyst Michael Gerhardt. He is a law professor at the University of North Carolina. Michael, if I could begin with you, your legal expertise, also historical expertise here. The House with this vote is establishing rules, but also granting privileges rights to the other side, to Republicans. They can call their own witnesses. The president's lawyers will be able to participate, although there are limits on that because they could subpoena witnesses, but that has to be approved by the Democratic chair. Tell us historically, are the rights now being granted to the other side? Are they in line with what we've seen in past impeachment inquiries?
They're not just only in line with what's happened in the past, there are actually more safeguards here for the president and the Republican minority in the House. Keep in mind that even in the closed-door hearings, Republicans were present and were able to ask questions. But what's being formalized today is an affirmation of everything that's come before, plus giving more safeguards to the president. And he's got a lot of defenders, of course, there to ask questions and perhaps seek subpoenas. That's a lot of protection at his end.
Shan Wu, do you agree as you look at this? Because, of course, you've heard Republican complaints. In fact, we should note, they called for a House-wide vote like this. It is happening. They called for additional rights, privileges, et cetera, protections. They're getting some, if not all, of what they've asked for. Do you agree that this is, by historical standards, a fair process going forward?
Yes, I do very much agree with that, Jim. And I think from a sort of a legal structural standpoint, if you look at the closed-door portions as the investigatory grand jury aspect of it, they're now preparing more for the actual trial with charges equating to the impeachment articles. And so it makes sense that they're now talking about how is the trial going to occur, what kind of procedures will be in place. And of course, strategically, it rather undercuts the Republicans' big argument. They've been forced to argue process, and this is the first step in eroding that argument of this is bad process.
Yeah, process and some character assassination we've seen as well, some of these witnesses. Michael Gerhardt, of course, the other drama playing out beyond the House floor, and again, these are live pictures from the House floor as these proceedings get underway, is in the courts because a couple of key witnesses have challenged the House subpoenas to come testify, including now Charles Kupperman, but now John Bolton saying he needs a subpoena if he's going to come testify. How do you see the courts deciding on that? Because this will be a key question going forward.
It should be a relatively straightforward question for the courts. Defying a subpoena and just not showing up and not even citing any privilege to protect confidentiality is quite unusual. And I would imagine the court will treat the legislative subpoena as a lawful order, and unless there's a good reason, that is to say an applicable privilege not to get into certain topics or mention certain information, I would think the courts would order them at least to show up.
Understood. And Shan, just for people at home, you have to remember back 20 years, the last time the country saw an impeachment proceeding. Remember, some of us remember, I covered the trial, the inquiry in the House, the trial in the Senate here. Going forward, what does this look like? The next steps, how much testimony, how much public testimony in particular should people expect to see?
Well, I think we're moving into the public testimony aspect of it. The investigation's been done behind closed doors, makes sense. They are prepared now, the Democrats, to put forth the public aspect of it, to really begin informing the American people what the case really is. It's been trickling out here and there with released statements, some of them by leaks, but now people will begin to get the full picture. And the House, if there's an impeachment, acts as the prosecutors. They're referred to as House managers, and they will be presenting the testimony much the way that a government prosecutor would put it forward. So from the public standpoint, this is the moment where we will begin to really hear the actual raw testimony.
Michael, before we go, the essential question here is a political one. Does the president's alleged behavior here rise to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors? It's sort of a similar question that was faced with the Clinton impeachment because many of the details of the behavior were not contested. The question was, did it rise to that level? And you're getting to a point here with all these corroborating witnesses that you're in the same kind of bind. From your view, historically, and again, this is a personal judgment, does it rise to that level?
I think everything we're hearing so far suggests that this is, as the speaker has said, deadly serious. I think there's a good case to be made, a credible case to be made, that what we're hearing right now does rise to the level of impeachable offense on the order of the charges made against President Nixon. For example, all the president's ordering people not to show up, not to testify, defying subpoenas. That could be called obstruction.
Yeah.
As we listen to Mr. Morrison today and others, we have to think about why did the president not want this person to testify?
And that is a point. We should note that it is likely to see articles of impeachment both on abuse of power related to the actual Ukraine pressure, but also on obstruction of justice, a response to the investigation. Shan Wu, Michael Gerhardt, we know we're going to be drawing on your expertise in the coming days and weeks as this proceeds. Thanks very much for coming on this morning.